and the terms of reference. It's around that. It hasn't actually been pushed by the Crown. It's been pushed by the treaty settlement groups themselves, who were quite clear that they wouldn't be moving, and therefore they put pressure on the Crown until this was actually specified one way or another. And there's been a lot of debate backwards and forwards about how that would be done. They were at one stage looking for that to be determined by the Remuneration Authority, and certainly both the Crown and ourselves had some concerns about that. In terms of the annual plan impacts, in recognition of this happening, the Crown the Crown gave this council $100,000 to meet the setting up costs and initial meeting costs. There is still about $60,000 of that fund left, and that is used for meeting attendance and for their travel expenses, and to date has also been used to put one member through the Making Good Decisions training course. That won't last forever, obviously, and so that we will have to look at how that is reflected through the long-term plan. It doesn't impact on the upcoming annual plan. The strong view of the treaty partners is that this is a cost of governance, and accept that it's a cost that's come to local government via the Crown. It is yet another one that has come via that, and I think it needs to be identified as such, but that it is the ratepayers of Hawke's Bay who benefit from the work that's undertaken in developing our regional planning documents. So that's really the rationale for that.
Can I have a supplement? Sorry, Councillor Belford. Can I have a supplementary to that too? One, what actually happens if we reject this? Describe the process.
I don't know. Well, if we cannot accept it, it won't go to the Legislative Committee in March. I don't believe. I'm not 100% sure. If this is the only matter that's outstanding, it may be that it goes with that identified around it, and they may agree to accept it and still process it. If there's obviously a number of concerns about the whole terms of reference, then that may be different. But I would need to talk to the Office of Treaty Settlements to find out.
And this kicks in when the final funding runs out.
Yes.
From the Crown?
Yes.
And any idea of the quantum? No.
At the moment, it would be, I've just done a quick calculation based on the number of meetings per year, and it would be around about $20,000 to $25,000 per year for the servicing of fees and travel, not for the general running of the committee, which, council, there is a council would have a committee anyway to do that work. We're talking about the costs of the additional members.
Councillor Belford.
I had two questions also, but one dealt with this as well, so let me stick with that to begin. So we're not instructed to do this. We have the option of coming up with our own cost formula if we wished, and understanding the dynamics involved.
Yeah, it's probably not so much the cost formula that it's in debate, it's who pays.
Well, yeah. Okay. Yeah. But what I mean by formula is that it could be, if philosophically this is setting up a process that brings equals to the table, then philosophically the two parties should pay their equal share of that. There are plenty of people who come to participate in governance, who seek to influence what we're doing, for example, who receive no support in that role. So I'm not quite, that was my first reaction to this, is why wouldn't this be, from an equity standpoint, a 50-50 proposition? My second, if we want to stay on this issue, I won't ask my second question, but I do have a second question. It involves the quorum and voting entitlement. We could reset those numbers too, could we not?
Yes, yes, you could.
Yep. If my math is correct, a quorum requires 14 out of 18, and a voting if not by consensus, is 15 out of 18. It seems hugely unreasonable, or more cynically, one might look at it and say it's loaded to prevent any decision from coming out of the process.
We've had as chair, we've had a couple of meetings where we didn't have a quorum. One was it? Yeah, one without a quorum. We had, interestingly, the meeting last week, we were just sitting on the cusp of quorum, and then someone left, and then before long another person came back. He'd gone to pick some kids up from school, so we maintained the quorum right through. But I appreciate your concern, and I have raised it. It has taken a lot of negotiating to get it there. It was to be consensus, full stop, at one stage.
Can I also comment, please, Mr. Chairman, on that? One of the, I guess this is really trying to recognise that the way that the Regional Planning Committee works is a bit different to the other committees, and generally, particularly when there's going to be, and you haven't experienced it yet because it hasn't really come to the table from the one meeting that you've had, but when you're looking at the development of policy and objectives and looking at wording and things like that, it's very much around trying to reach agreement on you're putting something out to the public. So in the end, it's a draft document that's going to go out for public submission. So the idea is that there's agreement around the table around the approach, around the high level objectives and policies, not necessarily around all the fine tuning and having to vote on every single piece of wording. So that's really trying to reflect that. And I'll just make a comment also about the actual quorum itself. I mean, that any of these could be changed by agreement of all the parties at some point. And I did discuss this just a couple of weeks ago with the representatives, Tania Hotmans and Roy Marta-Smale, representing the Treaty Settlement Group. It's only not worked once, and so we're reluctant to sort of see that change at the moment. And certainly they are reluctant to see that. And the reason it didn't work last time was we didn't have enough councillors.
Councillor Dick.
Mr. Chairman, my question, and it's perhaps to you and the Chief Executive, and it relates to the cost of governance here. Would not that cost be minuscule compared to the cost of administering, reimbursing and operating 6 to 8 rivers boards across the region, let alone the dismemberment of land and water management across the region, which is what we would have had if we hadn't managed to achieve this quite historic arrangement?
Yes. Councillor Grant.
Mr. Chair, I had the quorum thing highlighted as well. And I don't support an 18%. The quorum, maybe I'd wear that, 75%, but an agreement of 80%, well, if that was in this council, you would have everything blocked by now. And democracy in New Zealand doesn't change just because we're dealing with tangata whenua. Democracy is anything over 50%. And so I will not be supporting this like this. The other thing I want to highlight, just want an answer really. The tangata whenua representatives, I asked, it says here they are nominated.
Which page?
Oh, page 63. I asked at the Maori meeting committee yesterday, how do the different tangata whenua groups nominate or elect, or what is the process? And I was told they were elected in their various hapus, and I'm really comfortable with that. I just want to make sure that is the case, that they are elected from their various hapus, or not just whakapapa selection, which I would oppose.
So each tangata whenua representative represents one of the large natural groups that's been mandated by the Crown to settle treaty their treaty claims within Hawke's Bay. So they are either in the process of doing that, or they're a post-settlement governance entity, which is what PSGE stands for. So they're nominated to the council is what we meant. They're not, how they appoint within themselves is not for us to determine or even recommend. They're nominated by, at the moment, council, until the legislation's in place anyway, council must must appoint someone to a committee, so they have to be nominated through to us and for you to approve. So that's the reason for that word nomination. It's to come through to council for approval. So in the final version, it could be means each representative appointed by their respective group or post-settlement governance.
Well, then can I put my question to Mr. Mohi and say, are they elected from the groups, from the various groups?
Yes. Can I ask a question, given that you're only taking questions? So do the councillors understand the implications of the Deputy Chair when he opened the opening statement, that they are meeting with Nikki to discuss who talks on what ecological matters? So that really relates back to the individual claimant groups. Just want to know.
Yeah, well, that was fairly clearly made, that comment. Any other questions? Councillor Scott.
Clarity around the review of terms of reference, Mr. Chairman. These obviously were agreed with all parties. There's certainly a move within the administration, especially around water, from the Land and Water Forum, that things do move to consensus agreement and not simple majority. And certainly it was indicated from those parties that they were looking for consensus agreements out of the Regional Plan Committee. So if we change those terms of reference, I'm not quite clear under O whether it is a simple majority of bullet point 1 and bullet point 2 and both parties having to be in agreement, or whether the terms of reference are changed by that 80%.
Oh.
I'm not, suggesting one or the other. I'm asking the clarity around that particular
So all
statement.
I can really answer is for the councillors at a council meeting, it would be by majority, whatever the resolution is that's passed. In terms of how the tangata whenua representatives at a hui called for that purpose determine whether or not they support amendments, that's for them to decide, in my view.
Would have to be alignment of both groups.
They would both have to agree, yes. Same as for these ones as well.
Okay. Councillor.
I'm still confused. So this is a really important committee. This is possibly the most important committee that we've got, because in the future, and it's a very powerful committee and an important one. And so I think we've got to get this right. So if we have I just want to bring it down to a simple example. If we have a discussion, a vigorous discussion on some particular thing, somebody putting up a new factory or whatever, and it's affecting a river or whatever, and we have a vote on it, you're saying to get it over the line, we've got to get 80%? Well, I'm not going to agree to that.
Or consensus, or we go back until we get it there. That's how it works.
In the most important committee for the next decade to affect Hawke's Bay, we're agreeing to an 80%. Well, I'm not.
Yeah, just to finish that though, the issue is if it's not there, it has to be reworked and it has to be made to a place where it is there. So it's not. I understand your concern, but be aware that it'll be worked up. So if there was only 50%, 55%, normally, yep, tick the box, away you go. In this instance, everyone has to be comfortable with it before it goes out. And let's be clear on what we're deciding on here. We're deciding on process that then goes out through normal RMA channels for plan changes, etc., right? So what we're saying is it may take a bit longer sometimes. That's their answer. If they were sitting in the room here, that would be their answer to your concern.
So, Councillor, if I can also equate it to, you had a discussion last week, pardon, around the Tank Group report, and there's 30 members of that, and I think there was possibly 3 that expressed some reservations or wanted further time to consider the recommendations. So you had 90% agreeing that that report should go out for or go to the next stage. So that's effectively what's happening in this case as well. And I'd also say that if we find it's not working, I mean, both sides are practical people, and if we find it's really just sort of stymieing any progress on issues, we'd come back and look at those and look at how, but more fundamentally, look at how well we're working together. And, certainly as someone referred to the Land and Water Forum and the idea of collaboration and trying to get some kind of agreement on things. So you have your big discussions and your debate at the front end, not at the Environment Court. I think that's really important, and this is still an important principle to maintain. It's a principle of consensus. We may not have got the definition quite right, and we've agonised over this for a number of years, actually, about how we do this. But so far it's working.